Cool. Well, I guess we could get started. And I'll keep an eye on that channel. I just don't know why I don't have notifications on.
I noticed something in the channel earlier that one of the tags was going to, I have to look it up, something like that no longer exists. Scroll up here.
Oh,
no, it's back.
It might be, yeah, on the I think on the cadCAD side, on the cadCAD Discord, it shows up as like deleted group or something just because of the bridge, like it's bridging the messages over.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, on this Discord, it should work. Hey DWKT, glad you made it. Sorry about the confusion on the channel.
Don't worry, thank you very much. I actually didn't realize that. For some reason I was trying to go somewhere else. What's cool.
Yeah, all good. Were you on the cadCAD Discord by chance?
Yeah, I'm involved.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I guess this study group sort of sits on like the border of token engineering and cadCAD. So kind of confusing. I've had that issue a few times, but and actually I don't know if have you joined the study group in past weeks? I'm not sure I recognize the name.
No, it is actually the first time that that I'm here. So yeah, I've been taking part on some other things like the 360 and so on, but
cool.
not here.
Nice. And how'd you hear about it?
Well, actually, it was I was just browsing all the different channels, and actually the main reason why I actually got into TEC was just to learn how to properly code on using the cadCAD library. So yeah, right now I am doing that. I just I've been working on it. It's quite challenging for some things. I'm not like a Python expert. I kind of know how to use it, but I'm not like a super good data scientist. But yeah, it's good.
Yeah, no, that's a common issue. It's kind of funny. I think cadCAD just has this like reputation as being the tool that unlocks token engineering for everyone, but really it's like one of the tools that helps with modeling and simulations, and yeah, it definitely requires some programming skills, but there's also a lot you can do without, like in this, I guess, steps leading up to using cadCAD. So, but yeah, excited to hear a little bit about your project. I saw you signed up. That's awesome. And yeah, I guess just for maybe a little context on your side, since it's your first session, we have this, I'll share my screen, we have this one-stop shop document on Notion. Oh wait, you already know about this, I think, because you signed up. But if you're looking for just a little background on the program, these would be good resources. I'll share this link again in the chat just so it's on top. But there's some good resources just on the intro page here, this like program outline, and there's a recording of our kickoff session where we talk a little bit about the program. And yeah, then these are just like resources from past sessions. And then you signed up on this sheet, the session sign up sheet. There we go, right here. So yeah, and I guess I can just get started. Should we jump right into it, or does anybody else have any intro comments, questions?
No, ready to jump in.
Cool. All right. Well, sweet. I'll hand it off then. Quiet Catalyst, you are first. The floor.
Okay. Let me see if I can share my screen. I added a couple of figures that I'd be interested in getting feedback on. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
I can only see a small portion of it. Let me This is the first time I've done this, so give me a second. If I
Discord.
scroll like this, does it change?
Yeah, it's moving.
It is indeed
Okay.
viewable.
Okay, so I added a couple of diagrams, one for token staking, one for token liquidity pools. And so these are activities that would happen after the diagrams that I have at the top of my document about just sort of acquiring tokens through a bonding curve mechanism. So let me check, how familiar are people with token staking and liquidity pools? I don't want to repeat things that people are already well familiar with.
I'm pretty good with it, but I won't speak for everyone. Maybe
Pretty
a
good with
refresher.
it.
Okay. So maybe we can go through this, and you can tell me. I'm curious to just sort of check the perspective against other people's perspective. So in a token staking system, as you probably know, the validator nodes serve a purpose of securing the chain, much like the mining nodes do in a proof of work system. And so the way I'm depicting the system here is from an address or wallet, you would be allocating tokens to a validator node. And the node would lock those tokens for some period of time. And so that provides a liquidity mechanism, and that the node knows that those tokens will be available for that locking period. And in the process of validating transactions onto the chain, supporting the consensus mechanism, the validator node can use whatever tokens it has, so perhaps collected across several different stakers to support the consensus mechanism and maintain the security of the chain. So I'm depicting tokens going in to the validator node. There are policies on the validator node that cover the sort of lockup period, that unbonding period, as well as the APR that the validator node will pay, which is governed by however they're configuring their system. And I've seen everything from single-digit percentages to some over 100%, depending on how they're trying to incent the user base. And then, so in the process of staking, the validator node will pay staking rewards back to the address for reward for using their tokens in validation. And when the address signals that they want to unstake their tokens, then after the bonding period, the tokens are essentially returned to that address. And I've sort of depicted it as a logical connection between the address and the token supply, since the token supply is the stock, and the address is just a reference to that supply and is sort of coordinating who has, I guess, rights to use the tokens at any point in time. So I'll pause there, and you can comment or question on that.
I don't know if I think you were saying on a previous step how it was related to the bonding curve. Will we tackle also that part? I'm not quite familiar on how the bonding curve actually is implemented into the system.
Okay. So in this part of the system, presumably we've already gone through some sort of bonding curve to acquire tokens. So we might have gone through a mechanism like I'm showing here, where maybe we input fiat currency, and based on the bonding curve, we will receive some amount of the token for the system that we're using. So after we've gone through that, that token is connected with the wallet address. And that's kind of where things are picking up in the token staking diagram, is this address already has tokens associated with it, and so it is free to stake them with a validator node. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Other comments or questions on that?
I don't really have a question yet, but I guess from my experience, I've mostly, or I guess I haven't seen like bonding curve tokens or tokens that are minted from bonding curves as the token that's used for validators to verify a blockchain. Is this structure being used for any blockchain at the moment? I guess, yeah, because in my head, a bonding curve is something that exists on top of the blockchain, which probably has its own validator nodes and staking that's unrelated to the token on the bonding curve. I don't know if that was a good question.
That's a great question. You've stumped me.
Yeah.
So I'm still working my way up the learning curve on it. In the processes that I've gone through, there is this step of token acquisition, which I've generally assumed is governed by bonding curve, describing the exchange between fiat currency and the token that's being allocated.
Mm-hmm.
And then staking happens after that process is complete.
Mm-hmm. So I guess in like using Ethereum as an example, you don't really mint Ethereum or Ether by depositing fiat into a bonding curve to get Ether to then stake for, as a validator. I know that's obviously not how Ethereum works, but is that the same, like would that be the flow that you're talking about?
Could you rephrase that a little bit? So let's just go through the basics of acquiring the Ethereum. So you just go through an exchange, right, where
Mm-hmm.
you input your fiat currency and get Ethereum out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you could stake that, but you're not depositing the fiat into a bonding curve necessarily, using it to mint new Ethereum.
I think that's true. So, yeah, I'm not sure what the answer to your original question is, actually. I think there may be cases where you can go through the bonding curve as part of exchanging your fiat currency for a token.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can go through staking. But as in the Ethereum example, you may not have to go through that process.
Yeah. Okay. And so then I guess like using the TEC as an example bonding curve, there could be a staking opportunity for the TEC token that you mint. And that would be, so that's kind of what you're explaining here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I think I was trying to relate to different things. But yeah, I think I can follow now.
So, I think that's an interesting question, and I think it's one other example of how you can layer these things together,
Mm-hmm.
and that creates a really interesting design space, but it also creates potential complexity around how things are set up.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So I think maybe as like a bonding curve, looking at it from that way and kind of relating it to like sort of the way like Ethereum works, where you may have had like miners or there's some sort of inflation rate that's going on. And you're kind of like incentivizing people that like get in early for like buying tokens to then like take those tokens off the market to then like sort of earn more tokens in some sort of like inflation, which would be the staking period or the APR or the yield on that. So it's like as long as you take your tokens off the market, you'll earn more tokens.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a liquidity mechanism, right? Especially because of the unbonding period, you can say, well, all right, at least I know these tokens are locked up for, 14 days or 28 days or whatever the period is. So we'll have that much in the supply.
Yep. Yep. And then it's kind of interesting to think from, I think, the bonding curve perspective, depending on how your curve is set up, it's like the more supply that's on the market, the more expensive it is to get more supply. But at the same time, it's kind of interesting because the total token supply is like not the thing that's really driving the bonding curve, because otherwise you've got two different rates of token issuance, and so that's been a sort of an interesting like thing from my perspective as well, which is like how do you manage these two different sets of supply, or do you keep them entirely separate? So does the bonding curve still work on the total supply, where the people that are like staking, they're getting a discounted rate on the future tokens because they don't have to go through the curve.
Yeah. And some of the stuff I've been doing with different bonding curve shapes leads to different outcomes, right? Different incentive mechanisms, I guess. So, yeah, we can touch on that a little bit as I talk about some of the implementation.
Cool.
Okay, so moving from that into liquidity pools. So this is based on what I've learned in studying osmosis, which is a decentralized exchange in the Cosmos ecosystem. And if you're not familiar with Cosmos, it's a sort of application-specific blockchain framework, and it's managed through a proof-of-stake consensus mechanism called Tendermint. Well, actually not called Tendermint anymore. It's rebranded to Ignite. And so the way their pools work, I think, is similar to others, but there may be some nuances that are different. Basically, you're pairing two tokens together. So you might pair a Atom token, which is the primary token in the Cosmos ecosystem, with a UST token. And it leverages that sort of balancer pool concept where you want to keep the tokens in balance. And so they use a constant product style market maker, although within osmosis you can define your own sort of custom market makers if you want. And this is an area of, I would say, ongoing development. The whole purpose of osmosis is to provide people with a laboratory where they can experiment with different liquidity mechanisms. And so in pairing each token, a certain amount of token A and token B will be added into the pool, and then the pool will create this invariant token to be sort of a proxy for those pairs in the pool. And in a constant product market maker, the invariant token is to stay constant, and therefore changes in token A or B in terms of price. If token A changes, then token B needs to change to offset that to keep the invariant token constant. Within this world, you've also got things like APRs in terms of the rewards going back, or the rewards accumulating to the pool contributor. I've also seen setup of gauges which implement a policy that may change the APR based on changes in the bonding period. So maybe gauge 1 says you bond for a day, gauge 2 is 7 days, gauge 3 is 14 days, and each of those will correlate with different APR rewards. So as I'm talking through this, I'm thinking the flow of the rewards is not really captured in this diagram. That's something that could probably be added in a next iteration. And we see some of the same concepts that we saw in staking in terms of putting tokens in, and then when you unbond and pull tokens back out of the pool, and everything's mediated, in this case, within a decentralized exchange. Pause there and see if there are questions or comments.
Yeah, just a quick question. So, do most like sort of AMMs have a bonding period, or can like sort of liquidity leave the pool at any time?
You can have either, from what I've seen, but in general, the faster the money moves, the higher risk. So you have potential risk to liquidity if money can move through the system quickly, and you have potential risk of fraudulent activity.
Yeah, and then I guess here's another thing that I also am just kind of curious again, is that so I guess one of the things I've been thinking about is lately is the total supply of tokens, and then the viability of the liquidity pool. Is there any sense of like, oh, there are 50,000 of these tokens on the market, and there's like X amount of tokens in the pool, and like what's the potential for the liquidity pool to sort of collapse? Like,
Yeah, so one sort of rule of thumb that I've informally observed is people looking to have something like 30% of the total supply bonded in some form of a liquidity mechanism. And so I think that the implicit assumption there is that provides stability relative to that other 70% that's circulating.
yeah, that's cool. Because I've always been concerned about like having multiple methods of issuance and then not knowing exactly how much of the total token supply should be in the pool versus like how much should be like circulating.
Yeah, and so from my sort of newcomer perspective on this world, it feels like there should be more visibility there. So if I were responsible for a token ecosystem, I'd want to know on a pretty frequent basis what the key ratios are related to supply and locked tokens, and there must be a set of metrics, I think, that would be useful to understand the health of the token ecosystem. Okay, well, thanks for the comments on those. So in my cadCAD implementation, I've gone to working with version 4.28 based on, I'd done some stuff around the 1.0 early code bases, and I'd stitched together that coordinates simulation that I mentioned last time. And as I was working towards wanting to do something that was specific to token economics, it seemed like 4.28 was more ready to do that than the 1.0 version. And I found more examples in that world. So that's where I'm working at this point in time. And I started with a sigmoidal bonding curve example from Molecule that was built as sort of a one-page web app to show graphically under a handful of different scenarios how the bonding curve could, well, different assumptions about the bonding curve, different parameters, could change the way that pricing moves and ultimately determine fee collection as well as the amount of funding that's received through the ecosystem. And so it's really just modeling out how might fee collection and funding change based on different parameters around the sigmoidal curve. And what I've done is refactored that a bit so that over time, different bonding curves can be applied. And then I've added in the cadCAD framework to start moving it towards simulation. So right now I have a simple simulation with a single agent that can decide whether they're going to buy on any step through the simulation, and just working through the policy steps. And so the policy will trigger the signals that ultimately get used for updating the state of the system, and working through that dynamic where I've coded some simple policy steps that will return actions, and then through state update, you can have a purchase take place, and you can update the token supply and the pricing and so forth. So for next steps, I'm going to keep pushing that forward and hopefully get it to a place where it's somewhat interactive and can scale beyond the simple sort of single agent paradigm that I'm using right now to prove out the pathways.
Yeah, it's really awesome. Have you been working in, I guess you probably have your own repository with the code and you're still working on it. Yeah, it would be awesome to see at some point in the future once it's like showable, just to see the cadCAD code too.
Yeah, that's essentially what I'm aiming for at this point, is to get to having something that I can demo, and then I can share that through a public repository.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I think those are like going to be really interesting learnings on two pretty common mechanisms, bonding curves, validators. So yeah, that'll be really awesome to see what you find. You mentioned the like health metrics. I think that would also be a cool tangent to dig into a little bit, is like defining some metrics for the, before you run the simulations, defining some metrics that you'll want to analyze and how you might interpret them. Yeah, or how you might use them to answer questions.
One of the things I'm curious about is, so the bonding curve, as I see it right now, sort of exists in a theoretical construct. And what I'm unsure of is, as agents move through the system and behave differently, governed by the bonding curve, how might that change different aspects of the system? And so I think that's where some of those key metrics would come from, is trying to get a deeper understanding of what's changing in the system. For example, we talked about, maybe there are early adopters in a system and they might behave a certain way, and then there might be others who are equivalent to buy and hold investors, and others who are equivalent to day traders. And so if you have some mix of those different types in the system, how does that affect system performance?
Yeah, definitely. What I have seen used for what you're talking about is like a stakeholder mapping exercise. And so just basically, outlining or brainstorming the different stakeholders, and stakeholder being like an individual or a group that has specific preferences, background, beliefs, motivations, or whatever, that's going to be interacting with your system. And just thinking about like who those people are, exactly what you just mentioned, like those three profiles, and then like coming up with or like inventing like a background for them and like explaining what their motivations might be, and then what actions they could take on the system, and maybe just like doing some exercises of like, okay, well, what might their behavior be? What's some desired behavior for this group? What's the undesired behavior? And just using that as like an exercise to understand, what actors might be participating. So maybe that's something that you look into. I can definitely share some resources on that too, stakeholder profile mapping and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks for that feedback. It's it all exists in my head right now, and I think formalizing it with some structure would be useful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like another thing that I did in the past is I set up the agents with like sort of budgets, and then there was a paper not too long ago from maybe 2015 or 17 where people were trying to simulate, do this kind of bottom up aggregation of like being able to mirror like sort of the NASDAQ index in terms of pricing. And so what they did is they chose a population mix of like agents that had a certain length of memory, kind of like the genetic algorithms that we were talking about last week. And so like 1 or a 0 represents like a buy or a hold or like a sell. So 1, 0, -1, that kind of thing. And so like randomly generate strategies for your population set, and then you could sort of say like this person's strategy is like delayed like buy or delayed follower follower, and then the other one was like a contrarian, it was a delayed contrarian, and that kind of gets you like a diverse population set to just kind of simulate through a lot of stuff that could happen as well. So that would be like the less like stakeholder involved, but more just like a broad kind of general
Spectrum of
parameter street. Yeah.
Really
I like
cool.
that. You could also have dynamic behaviors, so somebody may start with one behavior and switch to another. I'd love to see a reference to that paper if you have it.
Yeah, let me see if I can't track it down, and I'll drop it into the chat. It's really fascinating.
Sounds related also to the prisoner's dilemma, the recurring prisoner's dilemma. I forget when that topic came up. I think it was 2 weeks ago. But yeah.
Yeah, it will be great. Please share it.
Awesome.
Right. Well, that's great. Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Cool. Let me just look. Who's next? So I think I'm actually on the list next, but I'm going to push mine to the end. We'll see if we have time. I was just actually kind of looking to collect some feedback and, just ask some more general questions about the study group from everyone. So I'll push my topic to the end. And DWKT, you have signed up third, so I can hand it off to you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. I would just start saying like, okay, thanks for the explanation that you just give to us, quiet, like what you are working on. I'm going to tell you what we are currently doing. Unfortunately I do not have the repo for the simulation and so on. Not even the high level diagram to explain. But I will tell you like what are the environment that we are actually looking to emulate. So pretty much what we're building right now is a life insurance protocol that uses NFTs as if they were a life insurance policy, and thus allowing them to be traded later on. So what we're doing here is, and this actually, now that you were talking about like the bonding curves and whatever, actually for our specific case, we will not really cap the amount of issuance for our token. And I was wondering there, okay, so if we will not really be having the that cap to provide like a reward for the miners, what are the incentives that we can give to them if there's no known price and known issuance beforehand? I don't know if you have like some experience in that. Hello.
Just to clarify, you're looking for a price discovery mechanism, or are you looking for a mechanism to govern what the price should be as the supply changes, understanding that there is no cap on the supply?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Given that there's no cap for the supply, and we are actually aiming to deploy like our own native coin, how will we be able to properly price the new tokens that will be generated from the from the mining process?
And does your question center on what should the initial price be, as opposed to what should the price be somewhere further out in time, or further out in the supply?
Yeah, exactly. Like given that there's no cap at any specific point, we want to know like how is that ratio, like in terms of the market cap, the issuance that is already there, the liquidity, the amount of tokens that are out there. I don't know if there's like a system that is already out there for miners to have like a reward system and be able to validate the chain.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've seen for initial pricing looks to me to be similar to what you see in the investment world, where you're trying to set a market cap based on estimated value of, in the investing world, you're doing on the company. In this world, it's a little different than that. You're doing it, I think, on the value of the ecosystem, and so that depends in part on the user base that you're serving and how you see them valuing the solution. And then in terms of offering people rewards, the common mechanisms I've seen are things related to staking. And so early investors might receive a higher incentive and an incentive for staking their tokens in order to provide liquidity to the overall system.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, actually, that mechanic is already there. Like, there's since we are like a life insurance product, we do need liquidity. So then there's actually that mechanism for the people that are staking on us. So yeah, that's actually needed from like an insurance standpoint, to even start up the engine, because if you don't have like the risk pool to pay out all the obligations, let's say, you cannot even start.
Yeah, you need a capital reserve.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what the capital reserve actually serves for. But yeah, that's in terms for the like how to retain the liquidity as you were describing, like these ratios and so on. But what I was wondering is like, okay, given that we still need to 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 give rewards for the people that are actually mining the new tokens, and that's where I just got like confused. Like I don't really know like how we will be able to price these new tokens, and they will obviously have like an impact on the supply and so on. And but I don't know if there's like any other mechanism that can be addressed there.
Yeah, I personally don't really have an answer either. But I think this is like a good example of what like questions you could answer by working through the modeling process. It's like one of those things that's hard to answer without having, I guess, experienced it before. And so like working through the modeling process to sort of like draft up the flows, the value flows and the new token that you'd be rewarding with, and how the reward mechanism works, who the participants in the system are, and like trying to understand that way might help. Yeah, but sorry, I don't have much of an answer.
I think the point about who the people in the system are is an important one that keeps at least coming up in my mind. It's about designing. It's the same question as you have in traditional software product design: is who's the user and what are their objectives? And in the context of token engineering, we want to think about how are we trying to incent those users, and what sort of behaviors are we hoping to drive as a result of the incentives.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's like a good starting point, like to create those incentives, no? In terms of the users, we have two main users. The people that are using the product, and that what they do, they use our native token
Hey,
to
Elbeth,
acquire.
sorry, could you mute?
Yeah.
Elbeth. Oh, there we go. Cool.
Yeah, don't worry. So yeah, I'm just gonna share with you like some other participants in the model, like the main users as we were saying before. The first one are the normal clients, just to call, which are the people that are looking for our protocol to have to mint a life insurance, and they use it using our token, which then it means an NFT that gives like an actual value for their life insurance, which is related to the total risk pool. We can call it like that, but it's actually the liquidity pool. It's actually the same. And then on the other side, the second user are the liquidity providers, and for them, it's the people that do not have an insurance and also an NFT. Well, actually, they will have an NFT since they will be providing liquidity, but they do not have a life insurance. So those are like these two main actors in our system. So basically, what this second one does, they do get rewards, like the well, it's not really rewards. They will be getting like a certain rate, an APY or whatever you want to call it, based on the performance of the insured risk. If we have like a certain amount of people and none of them died, for example, then the performance for that exercise is quite positive. So then the rewards that we can give, the returns that we can give to the liquidity providers also goes a little bit up. But yeah, those are like the main mechanics. But since we're also allowing people to mint, to trade their tokens, their life tokens pretty much, their life insurance tokens, there's also a fee mechanism there for us to fund ourselves. Actually, there are like three main sources of income. That one, the trading one, is one of them. But yeah, this process actually also requires all these things that I was describing before, like the participation of the miners that will keep all of that. But the rewards on that, I think that actually the simulations are the ones that will be able to tell us, like, okay, how many new tokens we will be able to provide to these new to whoever validates this block at any given time. I don't know. I don't even know if that can even be dynamic. You know. For example, if the market cap is 10,000, then you only issue 10 tokens, so to say. If a given price is there, I don't even know if that's even possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, sorry, guys.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like how to, because that part is, yeah, I mean it's the way how the supply will be growing, but we don't really want to be totally depleted and so on.
Yeah, it seems like you've got a lot of the just my observation is that you have a lot of the knowledge of the mechanism and the stakeholders and the actions and all of that, like, really well thought through, which is awesome. That's usually the hard part. But I guess my suggestion would just be to like try and use some of the use some tools to like get it out on paper, like some of the diagramming and system mapping tools, which there's links to in the one-stop shop, and some good resources on like where to start there. And then just like starting to build a visual representation of the system. I think that would probably help answer some questions or offer some clarity on some of this. But yeah, that's just my observation. I think you've got a lot of it really well thought through, which is awesome.
Okay, thank you. Like, I'm already like in the one-stop shop, and I would just take a look on these things that you were saying. I might think that it's one of the formal specifications or something like that, no?
Yeah, let me see if I can find it.
And don't worry, I will just click on all of them and
Cool.
find them out. So yeah, sorry for not being able to show you the model right now. Also, as I was telling you at the very beginning, I was like all the different variables that I was telling you and so on. I've been finding them quite challenging to code them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, on next sessions I'm gonna show you like how all of that is going.
Cool. Yeah, that'll be awesome.
Okay, guys. Unfortunately, I actually will have to leave. I have like another meeting that is about to start in 4 minutes. But it's been a pleasure. I definitely will keep in contact with you. If there's anything that I can help you with, or if you want just to reach me, or even to know a little bit more about what we're doing with Extra Life, which is the name of our project, and I would love to tell you more about it.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for joining.
See you guys. Keep having a good one.
Thanks. See you around.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't give anyone else time for feedback. interesting
Yeah,
project.
no worries. It was interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I could like visualize the system in my head as he was talking about it. But it is like, yeah, it's a lot of pieces. I feel like he's probably got most of them. Yeah, I don't know. He's seemed to have it really well thought through, which is cool.
It's just one single document that like throws out like all the entities that are in play.
Mhm.
Because it's really interesting idea to have a marketplace for like sort of life insurance
Yeah.
where like they could trade it, and it seemed like there were these liquidity providers that could pay for my life insurance,
I
which
mean,
would also be kind of cool. And then like as long as I don't die, they make money.
yeah.
That's what I think was the implication, and so I really wanted to know more about that.
And that
Yeah.
caught my attention as well.
Yeah.
Because it does make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's a great example of one of these ideas that is more possible now with new technology, but it's like the details of it and under like making a system that actually works is the complicated part, which requires token engineering. And it would just be amazing if there was a ton of token engineering resources that could help build that right now. But yeah, getting there.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, non-smoker in my 30s, please take a risk on me, and like, pay for my life insurance.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get like a 10%
Everyone wins.
APR. Yeah, exactly. On these tokens,
Yeah.
I had to mint this policy and then done.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be really cool. And maybe even some revenue sharing towards you.
Yeah.
Paid to live.
Paid to live. That's a great name for it.
Yeah, I like that.
Cool. All right, let's move on. I think, Zane, I think you were on the list as well. I clicked away from it for a second, but
Yeah.
did you want to share some updates?
Sure. Let me just let's go through this. No clear. And the danger zone.
Nice.
Linear combinations. Let's see. Let's go to my learning journey. All right. So the ever-expanding causal loop diagram. So I think most of you have already seen like.
Oh, actually, I think I'm
Discord window
getting
at
the
the
wrong
moment.
screen.
I
see Discord.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's try it again. Screen. Sure. Let's go live here. Okay. So, I think pretty much everyone knows what's going on. Probably where we left off last time, as you see, ever increasing set of boxes. We were talking about active participants and how there's a difference in like the quality of participant, and then sort of this idea of retention. So if we drill down, this week's sort of update is an attempt to sort of tackle that. So to the right, we've got like funding, and there are all these sort of economic like implications there about meeting funder expectations and future funding that applies to this total available funding, which then correlates to how much funding you have to reach sort of short-term goals or weekly or monthly goals or whatever this kind of sprint funding is. And so the amount of money that you have, the product needs, all drive how much you're willing to allocate to this idea that we're calling like sort of product development. So basically, the more sprint funding you have, the larger the individual monetary development incentives are on a per week basis. So if you have a $10,000 monthly budget, it's different than a $20,000 one. And so you can offer like sort of more to participants. So this split out drives into development incentives. And with development incentives, we also have these things called like utility. Utility drives these non-monetary development incentives. And so before, the way I had it was there was no distinction between new participants and old participants that are sort of retained, and like why you need sort of both parties. So one is when you look at these kind of drill down loops, you have like these development incentives that go into driving new participants, which is inversely correlated to the individual monetary development incentives. So the more participants you get, fewer individual monetary incentives there are, at least within this particular loop. And then,
Mm-hmm.
of course, as you get more funding, then this increases. So it kind of balances itself out. You have this balancing loop. And then when you look at development incentives, there's also old participants, or the people that you've retained, and they also decrease the amount of monetary incentives. And then sort of like over time, there's a reduction for the growing amount of retained people. There's probably, I couldn't really capture this, but I was trying to say that there's a reduction in individual monetary, non-monetary development. So it's that kind of thing where like over time, you've been at a job for 5 years, for 10 years, for 20 years, you have a lot of institutional knowledge, but probably the marginal rate of increased non-monetary benefits
Mm-hmm.
probably go down. Whereas you may, in a traditional company, receive more individual monetary development incentives. And that just has to do with like the gaining of expertise and a lot of sort of like soft factors that do like deal with individual development. Probably the thing that's most sort of interesting about the change here is like how like old participants drive other parts of your product development. So now we have this thing called long-term sprint goal achievement. So for instance, like if we think about like Geth client, Geth has the Ethereum client only has like a core set of developers, but there's long-term features like they have this thing on the inside of the component called a freezer, and the freezer is the thing that determines how fast the Geth client can basically retrieve old data, which has a lot of implications across like people that provide infrastructure like Infura or Alchemy or any of those places. But the only people that can really touch that are people that have been deeply involved with the Geth client for some amount of time. So only old participants are able to handle that. An example of like a sort of short-term goal or achievement that like a new participant or an old participant could handle or achieve would be something like adding a new RPC endpoint or something. It's a feature that doesn't touch a lot of the legacy code. It's something new, and it's rather detached from other points of development. So software in particular tends to have a lot of these kind of tasks that don't require long-standing institutional knowledge. An LTR for like any other type of business could be something like contracting with a new manufacturer. And it could be like, oh, in the past, here's the history of all the deals that we've done with this manufacturer for PCB boards, or it could be for T-shirts, etc. And so that institutional knowledge allows you to make the final say on like how you should structure your next manufacturing contract. So all of these drive into a better product, to more utility, etc. And sort of old participants have this other correlating factor, which is increased depth of knowledge. So like over time, you have more depth in your network that increases the utility, and new participants tend to add more breadth. So the more people that know about your product, the more people that interact with it, the more people that can handle some issues, increases that breadth of knowledge. And all those drive utility, and it's pretty much in the exact same loop as before. So that's kind of where I've like left off, and sort of the new thinking is, okay, I think this structure is pretty solid for me to try and build models that or simulations that represent the sort of left-hand side and this kind of right-hand side of the graph. So my goal here is to next build a differential spec that will represent this and this, and then to try and make it abstract enough to where I can do something like plug in a bonding curve or economic black box model, and then have that cycle through the rest of the development incentives. So you can see like what happens when the sprint funding kind of grows up or down, and then like how that interplays with meeting funder expectations, etc. Yeah. Okay. So that's pretty much so where I got off to, and I think Peter, you linked to
Yeah, the stock and flow thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I didn't get quite a chance to look too in depth at it, and I was actually hoping you had a bigger image.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So I took a screenshot from Miro, and I had a feeling it wouldn't pull out or come out very well. I think I can share the link actually, but I could also share my screen and pull it up.
Okay. Yeah, that would be awesome.
If we want to look at it, yeah, I have it right here. I will. That should work. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so I guess a little context. This was part of the Ecosystem Value Flows course that I took at the TE Academy in like May of last year, so almost a year ago. And I was just interested in like the token engineering ecosystem, and so my team was looking at like how a token engineering services DAO might look in or might fit into the token engineering ecosystem. But this is which has I think a lot of similarities to what you're talking about with like software development DAO services. And so that's just kind of like where I was drawing the parallels. But yeah, this is also like a year old, so let's see if I can give a good recap of it. And probably some of this doesn't make any sense, but I think the areas that I remembered finding some parallels were this evidence base and like individual token engineer knowledge, which is a stock that grows as practicing token engineers complete projects. So basically there's this like stock down here of eligible project hours, which comes from clients who are requesting projects or token engineering work. And then, so the practicing token engineers work on the eligible hours, and as they complete work, the stock goes down of eligible hours, but they also gain experience. And so I think you had a pretty similar like knowledge network part. But so that was just kind of represented as a stock in this. And then, I think some of the revenue streams are a little bit different. We had this idea of sort of a baseline income, like UBI basically, that would go to any active token engineers.
I have that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say I have that same idea that like you would be able to basically earn your way to that practicing token engineers like pool, and then that would just like put you in this like guaranteed flat rate of income. But you basically anyone can join this practicing token engineers, and then like they become a part of the core team once they have so many experience points. And the people that have like sort of fallen off, they kind of get evicted from the practicing token engineers.
Right.
So they don't receive that income anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in our situation we had this idea of also rewarding, making it really easy to join. So including in that UBI, maybe like at a lower rate or something, but including people who were like onboarding to become token engineers, or people who were doing research, more like education stuff, rather than actual like working services.
Yeah.
So that's just one difference, but obviously we wouldn't want to just like give it to anyone. That would quickly deplete the pool, but those are just two other groups of people that we had ideas about supporting.
Yeah, I think that this is exactly the same thing that I'm thinking about as well.
Yeah.
That this seems like the things that you would need, because like you don't want to exclude people that are not like writing code, because you want that to like have, and then you don't want people to not get paid for like work that they do, which is like the whole like sort of in my diagrams and thinking it's the whole Pico DAO thing.
Yeah.
So like for a sprint, anyone can make income, right? Yeah, and so it seems like that's the exact same sort of like thinking.
Yeah, exactly. And
it's cool.
Yeah, I don't know, did you have like there's also this like education or like academic component of the the ecosystem that we added, which was like the Token Engineering Academy sort of, or I don't know, it's a black box as you can see, but it's just meant to represent this like knowledge base, whether it's content like PDFs or videos or whatever, like academic content that helps to teach token engineers. Is any of this like academic, like digital library type concept? Is that anywhere in yours, do you think?
No, like I think
like a
the way
knowledge
that
commons sort of.
No, which is like kind of an important aspect of it. So I've been talking with some people from like the Near Foundation, and so they were kind of interested in being able to do that. And so they have like a thing called like I think a Near Wiki. It's kind of under like R&D, and so they've been looking at ways to like get people to be rewarded for contributing to that knowledge base. But I don't have anything like that, because I think maybe vaguely it's captured by weighted contributions, and so it's like per sprint, what were the contributions that were there, and maybe a contribution could be knowledge of some sort, or it could be an article, or it could be anything, but nothing that's formal like this.
Yeah, it probably would get captured like that, but
this is interesting because like I think the main problem with like all of these things in general for any project, any company, even like Raid Guild, they have like one of these onboarding flows. And so like maintaining that onboarding flow is actually a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it's like valuable work that like, really does need to be done, or else no one can join your project.
Yeah.
So like that's probably the barrier to entry to becoming a practicing token engineer.
Totally.
Or to join like any one small project, there's like a threshold.
Yeah. And like I mean exactly what you're saying, this is the barrier to entry, and it's also like probably the biggest risk for failure is like if you continue to take the stock of token engineers and they just like work and gain experience and work and gain experience, and then the gap between them and future token engineers just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then there's just more to more space to fill before you can actually like onboard people into that pool of practicing participants.
I think the way that Raid Guild does it, if I recall, it's all in their like public documentation, is that they take the feature token engineers bubble that you have there, and then they pair them with the practicing token engineers. And so like they're not like left on their own, and so then they complete the project for like eligible project hours together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus like them starting something smaller on their own. And so like and then that becomes like the raid party. So you have like one practice token engineer and a couple of like junior token engineers, and then they go for the raid, which would be the eligible project hours.
Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Was there any other like parallel? I guess you haven't really looked at this much, so you might not have any other topics. Oh, this could be something interesting, actually. So one thing we noted was income from outside the ecosystem. So that, I mean, obviously has an influence on the participants. And maybe in your example, it's like that negative feedback loop of experienced people who like might have less incentive to stay as they've like learned everything. Maybe they like also earn income in other ways, and eventually they just have enough to sit on, and then they stop working, retire, or whatever. Like, so I don't know. Income outside of the ecosystem could be a factor for yours too to consider.
Yeah, I think income from outside the ecosystem is like viewed in my diagram as funders. So those could be like anybody that's like outside the ecosystem that's just like, hey, look, here's a pool of money because I find X, Y, or Z like useful in some sort of way, or I have these expectations. I imagine that like income from outside the ecosystem also has like expectations that like people like do something. And I guess like one of the things I've been kind of like thinking about in the back of my mind recently has been like how do you have like undirected goals that end up being captured as well as being like useful contributions, if that's even a possibility. Because I think in my diagram there is like a set of people that could be either like elected. In the initial, it's always going to be like the startup founders, the people that are able to then say like, hey, look, here are some things that we're trying to tackle based off of all like the needs and the products, etc. Here are the things that are available to work on. Let's like work on them and like get them done, that kind of thing. But that process is very like top down. So I'm kind of curious also about like what is it like to say like here's a pool of money, do something useful that the community will like sort of, I don't know, vote on? And can you do that on like a weekly basis in some sort of way? Is there any way to like make that happen without someone directing like the work itself? So that's but that's like kind of, it gets further and further off into the weeds, I think. Because it's like, oh, that's like many levels of abstraction. Once you have a system that like kind of works from like a little bit more structure, it's probably easier to go to less structure from that.
Well, you can imagine a sprint planning construct that was set up as a DAO so that there's effectively a formalized voting mechanism that takes place to decide what goes into the sprint. And so if you apply that in the context of what you're describing with here's a pool of funds, go do something interesting, there's the question of when you say go do something interesting, should I say what's interesting and get approval first, or should I just go do something and bring it back and people can tell me whether it's interesting?
Yeah.
Sounds like the token engineering commons, sort of like the funding pool, and the go do some or here's something interesting is like someone's proposal for a project and a request for funding, and then whether or not it's actually interesting is basically the outcome of the conviction voting.
Yeah. So yeah, that's very interesting thought. And I guess one of the problems with like go do something interesting and like the retroactive funding is that like it's retroactive funding. But if you viewed it as like a bonus on top of like a baseline income,
Mhm.
where like you'll still get points for the experimentation, but
Yeah.
like the actual weighting of it like could be interesting. Like I
Yeah.
guess that like that osmosis that like I think people have been talking about, was it? The like funding model that's streaming, where you kind of do conviction voting but on a streaming process. So you either stake some
Mm.
tokens in a particular direction. Maybe that's like one way to say like, oh, I think this contributor does interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I'm glad this was useful. Or
Yeah, I wanted to
Oh,
come back to the discussion on onboarding because I think there's a lot of value there. Certainly, one of the challenges in building an organization is getting people to a productive stage. So, if you were to put a metric on it, what's the time to productivity for a new engineer, for example? And um, pretty much every organization has less onboarding material than they would like to have, and as you mentioned, it's difficult to establish that and maintain it. So, even taking that as a small piece of this larger thing that you're looking at, it's an interesting problem space to work in that has a lot of potential value to organizations.
yeah.
yeah.
I feel like one of the hardest parts is that like onboarding is specific to the organization or the community, or yeah, it's like the content is proprietary, or yeah, you need experience to really know what to include in it.
Yeah, I
Sure.
think that can be true. But my experience onboarding into the world of token engineering has been a lot of navigation of different things that feel pretty open source,
Mhm.
but there's not a well-defined path to walk in terms of how you get started
Oh
and
yeah.
move forward.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the onboarding thing, like, I think makes a lot of sense, especially as like sort of a focus, because like I think many organizations have like zero onboarding. And so like what a lot of people have been thinking about is doing like POAP flows. Um, so it's like um, I know like Developer DAO has been like sort of messing around with this for a little while, which is like, oh, you complete these steps, you earn the POAP, and then that like qualifies you to go and do X, Y, or Z. But I think like the incentive structure behind like structuring the onboarding or even like offering yourself as like an onboarder should be rewardable in some
Oh
sort
yeah.
of way.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Yeah, and so
like,
back to the life insurance example, if we draw an analogy with something like productivity or something related to progress with onboarding, and you can potentially incent a community to onboard new people and make them productive, right? If you define a mechanism that rewards for that.
Mhm.
yeah, I like that idea a lot because I think especially when you're in a new community, that's probably the thing that you're looking to prioritize, which is just like, hey, how do we like find users and like figure out where their tension points are, and how do we like get that like going, or like how do we find people that are willing to like participate in this community-driven like session.
Yeah.
You mean like financially reward people, like the onboarders or the onboardees, like, or both?
Potentially both.
Yeah.
So if I go back to the life insurance example, and as we were discussing that, we're talking about how you're potentially incenting a community to invest in your health and sort of be incented by your survival, if you will. Feels analogous to this notion of onboarding. You're entering a new world and trying to become healthy and productive in that world and survive for some reasonable period of time.
Survive as a token engineer. I'm just trying to survive, keep my head above water.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, right? I like the idea in that analogy because it's like, oh, cool. So yes, I will bet on your survival as a token engineer, and like if you don't survive and you drop out in the next like 3 weeks, then like that's like a death, and I gotta pay out the premium for that.
Yep.
So
that's kind of
really interesting.
Yeah. So if I can help you succeed as a new arriver, then it benefits both of us.
Yep. And yeah, that's a really interesting model for referrals and retention. There are like some negative incentives for that. So let's say I'm doing something for a trial and I find that this sucks, but then I bet on you. So now the negative thing I'm going to do is spam you to death and tell you that you have to stay even though this thing isn't right for you. Because I don't have any incentive to not do it.
And you have potential compounded loss in that you've already decided you didn't like it, and so if you're less helpful to other new people that you've already invested in, then you're going to lose that as well.
Yeah. And then the other thing is like you can think a little bit of fraud in the sense that like if I feel like I'm going to like lose money on you, can I pay you to stay in the ecosystem for like for 2 more weeks?
Long enough.
Right? So like
that's just arbitrage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will be interesting. And then like there's also like I guess you could even take it further and just like extend it into like a weird kind of court system of sorts where like if the person quits and then they can flag you as a spammer and get you like flashed potentially. But like it would probably have to be something like it goes to, I don't know, Oregon court. I don't know if that's still a thing anymore.
Yeah, me neither.
Because I know so many people got pissed off that they had court cases against them.
They closed the court.
Yeah. But like there's that potential to say like, hey, look, there's a dispute here about this reputation that's on the line. So I think weirdly everything kind of points towards reputation systems. And like that's like always the scary thing.
Yeah.
But like essentially we're already in a reputation system that's just like a lot softer at the moment.
Yeah, I was just reading yesterday a bunch about the student loan crisis in the US and just like how all the federal loans are continuing to be delayed and like what's wrong with this loan environment. And it's almost the same concept. It's like how do we like where's the accountability? And like the government was betting on the survival of all of these people through college, and then these people paid these private institutions a lot of money and then didn't end up like making enough income to pay back the government or et cetera. So it's kind of, it's an interesting application.
Yeah, that's a great parallel. And the incentive structures were not aligned there, right? So people getting paid for these students going to whatever school were not incented to ensure their success.
Yeah, totally. They're incentivized to climb the rankings so that more students come and they can increase tuition further.
Yeah.
And then who's making the rankings? Who's deciding that?
And the inflation rate on U.S. universities has been
Oh, it's insane.
15 and 20% for several years
Insane.
now.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we just solved it.
Good. Let's go.
A lot of reinvention to do.
Yeah. Cool. Zane, what was?
Big connect.
Yeah. Yeah, Zane, did you have anything else to drop in? Next steps or?
No, I didn't
forget
have
where we
anything
went.
else
Maybe.
to add.
Hi.
Hey, Alba.
Apologies for disturbing.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, apologies for disturbing the meeting. Yes, please, I want to find out if there is anyone that is very proficient in cadCAD modeling. I'm sorry, I had some family issues that took my attention. I should have uploaded my stuff on the Notion page. I will do that. But with that, I started modeling, but I'm not that great proficient. I'm still like at the beginner's level. So I wanted to find out if there's anyone that is very skilled in modeling. I can check what I'm doing with.
Yeah, good question. I actually don't know. Has anyone in here done CAD modeling? I've done like a half of an extremely simple model 6 months ago. But Elbeth, are you like running into an issue with modeling, or do you just have some questions?
Yeah, okay. Maybe I'll get that prepared against next meeting, or I'll upload it on the Notion like big staff presented or has been presenting. I have one task at hand, and I would just want a broader view as well as feedback to check if I am doing it correctly.
Okay, I had a little trouble hearing you. Were you saying you'll add your questions into the Notion?
Yes, I have a task. I have a modeling task. But I'll speak to it. I'll get the diagram ready next week. I just want a kind of a feedback or someone to check my work. Maybe I'll present it by next meeting to check if I'm correct. We'll just brainstorming to see if what I'm doing is okay.
Cool. Yeah, totally. I think this would be a great place. I think we would be really interested to see the code you're working on, and the model, and can definitely give some feedback. I forget, have you presented your topic yet? I know you've been in a few calls already for the study group.
I just spoke about it, but I've not really with the details on presentation for visuals. I just spoke to it.
Okay, you were having some issues with the presentation visuals?
Yeah, I have a normal room, so I just want to check. If you check the Discord channel, I just came in. I had issues with configuration. It wasn't running, and I checked Stack Overflow. I checked everywhere. I couldn't get an headway. Until later, okay, I spoke to someone that is skilled in Python programming, so we were able to walk through it one after the other. And so that's what I mean. Eventually, I got it because I think I tagged you in the Discord channel. I
you already sent the
posted
message.
that section of code.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't see a tag. Was it in the cadCAD Discord?
Yes, the cadCAD study group.
cadCAD study
Maybe Saturday or Sunday. I think Saturday, thereabout, or Friday.
Okay. Sorry,
Yeah,
I didn't
prepare
see.
against next class.
Well, yeah, if you posted your question in there, I can take a look. I'm not sure I'll be able to. Oh, I see it. Yes, from Friday.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So you're still working with cadCAD 1.0. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have not used that yet. It might be harder to, maybe I can help right now, but it might be hard to get a model up and running with that, just because I know that they're still working on that repository. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm not I don't think it's really ready for yeah, actual modeling yet. The cadCAD 1.0 reference implementation, but I can try like tagging Tyler or Chris or someone else in the cadCAD Discord and see if they've been able to run it yet, or if you're running into that configurations error just because it's not ready.
Yeah, I found in order to get things running in 1.0, I had to pull code from various repositories. And so I think I maybe started with the master of the reference implementation, and then I had to pull from one of the branches, and then I actually went to an external repository that had some 1.0 prototyping things in it. So I would agree that 1.0 is
Not quite
ready
ready.
to go out of the box at this point.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Okay, so what do you suggest I use? Just the reference modeling that Tyler talked about?
I think, go for it, Zane.
I was gonna say I like RadCAD. So like RadCAD's a little bit closer, I think, to maybe the cadCAD RI like implementation. And I think it even uses some like types. There's a couple of implementations like and examples of using kind of RadCAD, which would be like the RI model, and then I think there's the Ethereum like economic model. If you haven't looked at that, that's kind of like a bigger one. But I think that RadCAD is just like easier to use.
Yeah.
From like my limited hacking. That's what I'll say.
What's the relationship between cadCAD and RadCAD? Is RadCAD a fork plus some nicer syntax, or
Yeah.
how should we think about those?
I think it was just, it's an independent code base, but it uses the same like framework, reference implementation sort of. I'm not sure what the right term is for it, but yeah, so it has the same like structure, but it's written in Rust instead of Python. So it's kind of like the difference between the 1.0 Julia version and
It's still Python, right?
Oh, I thought it was Rust. I thought that was the R.
No, I think it's just Python.
Oh.
It's just called RadCAD because it's rad.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, then I guess I'm wrong.
Because
Do the two groups collaborate at all?
All right.
They're cadCAD compatible. So like, it's just that RadCAD's thresholds.
Yeah,
lower.
Zane, is there like a repository for the RadCAD?
Yeah, I am on it right now. I'm trying to find the cadCAD study group chat. I was looking at the video view. Okay, I dropped it into the repo, and then I would say like, there's also a video that goes through like using RadCAD for Ethereum economic modeling, and there's a whole Masterworks course, but you have to pull like a particular version. But this is also pretty useful if people haven't seen it.
Cool. Oh yeah, I remember looking at that a while ago. Yeah.
Does anybody know if there's collaboration between the two groups?
No, I don't think so. So CAD Labs is like a independent consulting, token engineering consulting firm, and I think they're like closely related to Block.Science, like people-wise, relationship-wise. But yeah, and then RadCAD was definitely developed from cadCAD, or like as a branch of cadCAD's, branch of cadCAD, but I think it's not being supported by anyone in the cadCAD world.
Yeah, I guess it was my takeaway from just like the conversations that like RadCAD does a lot of the stuff. And then like with the type system that like in some of the structure that's like more learnings to like refine like cadCAD 1.0. And like I wasn't sure if like anyone was using RadCAD going forward, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was developed out of like some needs for out of cadCAD that weren't there by the CAD Labs team, but then they obviously like open sourced it, so other people have used RadCAD. But I think it's the same idea where the cadCAD 1.0 will have a different framework than both of those. So yeah, but that's also not my area of expertise yet, at least. Cool. But Elbeth, was that
Thank you.
helpful?
I'll check and yes,
Awesome.
if I have any issue, I'll get in touch with you. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. And sorry I missed the tag. I think if in general, I think that's the cadCAD Discord is a good place to drop questions like that. I've seen some responses to RadCAD and cadCAD questions. So if you have any issues with RadCAD, you could probably try and post there too. Cool. All right. So last on the list was sort of my topic. I am trying to figure out if I don't have like super clear thoughts on this yet, but so maybe won't want to bring it up yet. I'll do some thinking, more thinking about it before next week and get some feedback. But this past week I basically did like a retraced my steps through like everything I know about modeling and simulations because I was just really trying to understand like what my learning goal is. And I realized that I was, working on this predator-prey model, and it was, I like was able to dig into an existing model. There's already math specs for it, which was nice. And I think I got to like the end of the very simplified version that I had, but I was, trying to understand like what kind of revisit my learning goal and understand like what I wanted to get out of this study group, and whether I wanted to pick up another model or add complexity to the predator-prey one. And then I also was kind of realizing that this is a cadCAD study group, or at least it's called the cadCAD study group, but I hadn't actually used any cadCAD yet, and I don't think anyone has really yet. So it just got me thinking a lot about what modeling and simulations means, and more about like the skills and knowledge that are part of that the modeling and simulation process, which I think that we've all kind of realized there's lots of steps before actually using cadCAD, and all of the system mapping and visualization tools, and just like understanding the causal loops and all this like more qualitative thinking. But anyway, so I kind of went down some rabbit holes of systems thinking and systems control theory. Was basically digging around everywhere on Wikipedia, reading some thinking and systems books, and trying to, I guess, figure out where to go next on my learning journey. And I don't really have an answer for it yet. So I will probably table my topic for next week. But yeah, I think that's kind of it.
It sounds related to our onboarding discussion.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is. It's also interesting that we were talking about that and the token engineering ecosystem as well, because part of my motivation for running and participating in the study group, or I should say organizing, not really doing much running, but is to create more, or I'm like kind of like curious about investigating the different types of learning experiences for token engineers that could be scaled to bring more token engineers into the space. But at the same time, I don't really have all of the knowledge or experience myself. So it's hard to, like create that content or experience for other people. So I'm also like trying to figure out what a good place to start is for the onboarding experience. And I guess like one thing I've thought about is creating more of like a modeling and simulations like wiki almost, just like we were saying with these onboarding wikis. But obviously there's a lot of established content, videos and books and PDFs online about, that go into all of this like systems thinking and control theory and differential equation solutions and all that stuff that are skills needed for the modeling and simulation process. So I was kind of thinking of making my learning goal actually to like try and consolidate all of that, or at least some of that into a helpful structure that could be used by other people, including myself. So yeah, I may pivot towards that. But definitely related to the onboarding topic.
I think it's a great line of questioning in that one of the attractions of the space is how many different fields it draws from.
Mm-hmm.
That's also one of the challenges of the space, because you just touched on, I don't know, 3 or 4 of them in
you could spend a
walking
lifetime in
through.
each.
Exactly. And so when you're coming new to this space and sort of trying to figure out how to integrate with it or interoperate with it, that is a genuine challenge, and there's probably some kind of rubric to be developed that charts one or more paths depending on the background that you're coming from. I think it will probably anchor to the fundamentals of systems engineering, and which I think this group has done pretty well, especially given how it's sort of organic in its evolution, right? I think there's been a pretty disciplined anchoring to systems engineering concepts, and having those in place first will lead to better things related to choosing the mathematics and ultimately choosing how to implement a simulation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you mean, you said this group, do you mean like the token engineering community, or this study group?
The study group itself. So coming into the study group, I thought it would be more heavily cadCAD. I thought it'd be a way to learn cadCAD, and it is in some ways. But we've anchored pretty closely to the systems approach at this stage of our evolution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That was basically one of my like big takeaways this past week, was that realizing that like I sort of fell for the cadCAD meme of like cadCAD is token engineering, but really token engineering is a lot of other things before cadCAD. And then cadCAD's the tool that helps at a certain stage of token engineering. And
or a tool.
Yeah, it's a tool. It is one of many tools.
It's looking like 80% not cadCAD, 20% cadCAD.
Oh yeah, totally. And that's what we think before we've gotten to the cadCAD part. Maybe it's there's more not cadCAD after cadCAD. But yeah, I mean, I guess like from that, just from that realization too, I've been thinking about like how this study group could be used as more of a resource for token engineering rather than like, I guess it's sort of siloed just by name in the cadCAD community. And cadCAD itself as a tool could be used in many other use cases besides token engineering, but I think I'm most interested in its use case within token engineering. So I guess I've been thinking about like whether this could be like almost rebranded as a modeling and simulations working group that does what we've been doing more or less, with the eventually getting into cadCAD once we get there. But so not sure, maybe that will happen.
I think that's worth considering.
Yeah.
Because other tools, Machinations is getting some attention these days. RadCAD, which is adjacent to cadCAD. So, and they serve various different purposes. I think RadCAD serves essentially the same purpose as cadCAD from what I know of it. Machinations is different. Nevertheless, either could be useful in different circumstances, and so rebranding as something aligned with hands-on token engineering independently of different tool sets could be a worthwhile thing to do.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead, Zane.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, I agree with that. Like, just a token modeling group in general. I mean, hearing everyone's like breakdown of how they're thinking about drawing their like systems diagrams, their stock and flows, and how they're like conceptualizing like these systems has been like super invaluable. Yeah.
Cool. The thing I've learned is just a little bit about structure and learning experience. And I think that's like the big takeaway is learning experience, like emphasis on the experience part is like, that's one of the only ways to learn this stuff because none of it is content yet, at least like in the token engineering world. So like the best and one of the only ways to learn is through experiencing it. So I guess that is what I'm hoping to create an opportunity for in this study group for myself and others. So, yeah.
I'll the comment. I found that things I thought looked obvious or should be obvious have not been obvious. So it's an interesting aspect of token engineering, even related to the discussion we were having about the staking and bonding curves and how do those relate to each other. You'd expect there to be a clearer answer than what we came up with.
Yeah.
So I think the study group can facilitate the discussion and hopefully build the knowledge or access the knowledge to provide, I guess, clearer answers than what we got to.
Yeah. Do you think like the experience of picking a system that you're interested in personally is a good way to go about the learning experience for just modeling and simulation, or would like a little more structure? Yeah, definitely.
I think people tend to be more motivated when they're working on a project that's meaningful to them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I would agree that like the ability to see a variety of systems has also been really nice.
Really
because
important.
like I'm over here, but then I was listening to Quiet Catalyst talk about like the metrics for staking and like bonding curves and like the health of the system and things like that. Gets me thinking about liquidity and the health of my system. I was like, oh yeah, I need like better metrics. Like, how do I qualify this? It's actually quite important.
Yeah, good cross-pollination.
Yeah. Cool.
Like even the conversation about the prisoner's dilemma with genetic algorithms has cross-pollination because
ended up being relevant.
Yeah, and we all need like sort of ways to represent agents, and genetic algorithms are like a reinforcement like learning mechanism that like we could all pick up as like, oh, okay, we want to have a genetic algorithm that like picks a strategy. And I think like agent strategies kind of probably all look fairly similar in terms of like at least the base level structure. So it's a good basis for being able to like actually create like a toolkit of stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's super valuable, like cross-pollination of ideas. Yeah, then I guess the other thing I wonder about is like to capture value out of something like this. Do you think it's, I mean, it's obviously really valuable to have the experience of going through this process and sharing ideas and everything. Do you think it's worth like the effort to try and create something like an open source model or documentation or like, more of like contributing to the commons with a real, like with text or code, or is like the knowledge sharing more important?
Yeah, like my quick take on that is like, I guess one of the things that's kind of disappointing at the moment within the ecosystem that I've been concerned with for a while is the ability to share models is actually incredibly like low.
Yeah.
And so like I think that's why it was really kind of hopeful about cadCAD 1.0
Yeah.
that there could be a better way to like actually share models. Actually, like I think in 2018 or 2019, I started like working on a thing like Token Spice to do that similar thing called TokeSim. And it does basically the exact same thing that Token Spice does. And like the difficulty there were that like Python types weren't like strong enough yet. And so there's a lot of problems with like saying like, oh, this does this, and then like figuring out how to get agents together. So like I think maybe we don't have the structure to write code. Maybe we could do a collection of like model descriptions or something like that. I'm not sure. Like in text. Or maybe diagrams are actually the thing that's the most important.
Yeah, right. That has all the information in it anyways.
Maybe I've just been looking at it the wrong way. I've been tying it way too closely to code because we're spending so much time like actually like figuring out the loops and like those systems that maybe there's just needs to be maybe there's a nice spec of like systems for causal loop diagrams, for stock and flow diagrams, and then mathematical formulas to apply or considerations. And like that's like enough to say like, oh, this is the way that a bonding curve generally practices. And if you like fork off of this, then you can modify the documents, the diagrams and stuff to meet your particular system. Would be useful.
Yeah.
The design patterns for token engineering.
Yeah, totally. Like, I'm thinking like an outline for, I'm not sure what the right word to call it is, but like a template for certain systems, like a template for bonding curve or a template for staking mechanism, and it has like your assumptions, your key questions, the variables listed, and then like the images, the diagrams, which can all be used as like that's the foundation. But
one of the things I've been thinking about, and I guess the reason why I've been using draw.io is like a way to actually share the diagrams. So like an open source tool that has like a spec of like, oh, this is like where the loop goes. So that's probably also somewhere along the spectrum of like a worthwhile endeavor. So that way it's like, oh, it's not locked by like a Google Doc or something. You could commit it somewhere like you would like code. and then it's editable. That's the main
Yeah,
thing.
that's the key. Yeah. It's called Draw.io. Draw.
Yeah,
Cool.
so I use
Look at
Draw.io
it.
for all the diagrams. So I've been like, so like I can put eventually, well, I should probably do this sooner rather than later. I can put all of my diagrams in GitHub, and then you can just download the .xml and load it into Draw.io. Either the standalone program, so like it just can run on the desktop through like Chromium, or you could load it into the browser.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I didn't know about that. All right. Yeah, that was actually really helpful. Glad we covered that. So that's like sort of a meta topic. I'm like interested in the creating a learning goal that helps me work towards like my goals of creating the learning experiences for other people, but it's also involves the structure of this study group. So I am planning to do some more thinking about it, and yeah, it's really helpful to get feedback. But my brain is fried, so I'm gonna stop for now, and we're past the hour anyway. So, cool. Any last comments?
Good discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Really interesting again today. So thanks for joining, and thanks for obviously doing some work in between sessions. That is like the lifeline of the study group. So I'm glad, really appreciate some contribution. I'm glad you guys are finding it valuable. And yeah, hope we can continue.
Thank you.
Cool.
Nice.
Yep.
See you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.